What happens when nature's fiercest predator steps into the spotlight? We're talking about wolves, those apex predators with eyes that pierce your soul. From chilling tales of survival in the wild to extraordinary displays of wolf behavior, these creatures have captivated human imagination for centuries. Whether they're leading the hunt, forming unlikely friendships, or demonstrating their raw power, these majestic creatures never fail to amaze. Today, we're diving deep into unforgettable stories of wolf encounters, some terrifying, others downright heartwarming. So buckle up, folks, because things are about to get wild. Donnie Vincent, a hardcore hunter and filmmaker, goes to these crazy, remote locations, like way up north in the Arctic. He and his crew were surrounded by a pack of wolves miles from civilization, actively hunting. Can you imagine that, being surrounded by these apex predators in their element? Donnie said the hair on the back of his neck stood up. They were close enough to hear the wolves breathing, to see the hunger in their eyes. He said it was both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. They managed to capture the whole thing on film too, which is insane. You see these wolves working together, their communication, their strategy, it's like nothing you've ever seen. Donnie said it was a humbling experience, a reminder of the power of nature and the raw instinct that drives these animals. The wolves eventually moved on, focused on their hunt, but that encounter stayed with Donnie. He said it changed his perspective on wolves, on the balance of power in the wild. It made him realize how vulnerable we are out there, how we're just visitors in their world. So I've got this buddy, Glenn Vobb, a wildlife photographer who spends a lot of time in Yellowstone. He told me this crazy story about a time he was charged by a whole pack of wolves, like 20 of them. He was out there tracking this pack, trying to get some shots, the usual. And he found them feasting on an elk carcass. He set up his camera, trying to be all quiet and respectful, not wanting to disturb them. But then something shifted. The wolves, they all stopped eating at the same time, and they all turned and looked right at him. He said it was like they knew he was there all along, like they were just letting him watch. And then they charged. He barely had time to react. He scrambled back, threw his camera bag at them as a distraction, and made a run for his cabin. He made it inside, slammed the door shut just as the wolves were lunging at it. He said he could hear them scratching, snarling, trying to get at him. He stayed holed up in that cabin all night, too scared to even move. And in the morning, when the sun came up, the wolves were gone. That experience taught him a valuable lesson about respect, about knowing your place in the pecking order. I was watching this video the other day. It blew my mind. It was this wolf, right? And it sees its prey on the other side of this fence. Now, this wasn't just any fence. It was like a 6-foot-tall fence, like something you'd see around a prison yard. And this wolf, without hesitation, leaps over this fence like it's nothing. I mean, it was like watching an Olympic athlete, the power, the grace, the precision. It landed cleanly on the other side, snatched up its prey, and then jumped back over the fence like it was hopping a puddle. It was incredible. We were watching it in slow motion, rewinding it, trying to figure out how the wolf managed to jump that high. It defied logic, defied physics. It just goes to show you the raw athleticism of these animals. Chapter 4, Wolf Sanctuary Realities, Angela Hill's Perspective. So I had Angela Hill on the podcast a while back. She's a wildlife biologist, knows a ton about wolves, and we were talking about wolf sanctuaries, these places where they take in wolves that have been rescued from captivity or injured in the wild. Now, on the surface, it sounds like a good thing, right? Giving these animals a safe haven. But Angela gave me a different perspective. She said it's not always that simple. See, a lot of these wolves in sanctuaries, they were raised by humans. They never learned how to be wild wolves. They don't have the same instincts, the same social structures. And so putting them in a sanctuary, it's not really giving them back their wildness. It's more like putting them in a zoo. These sanctuaries do important work, rescuing animals that would otherwise be euthanized and educating the public about wolves. But it's a complex issue. Angela made me realize that sometimes the kindest thing we can do for these animals is to let them be wild, even if it means they face dangers in the wild. Chapter 5, The Super Pack, a Force of Nature. Have you ever heard of a super pack? It's this phenomenon where multiple wolf packs come together, forming a massive group. And when that happens, watch out. They become an unstoppable force of nature. There was this one story in Yellowstone where they had this super pack, like 20 wolves or something crazy like that. They were wreaking havoc on the elk population. They were taking down everything in sight. There was this one particular hunt. They were tracking this herd of elk, like 19 of them. The wolves split up, surrounded the herd, and drove them towards this canyon. It was like a scene out of a nature documentary. This epic battle, wolves against elk, dust flying everywhere. The wolves were relentless. They took down every single elk in that herd. This super pack dominated that area for years, controlling prey populations and influencing the entire ecosystem. Chapter 6. Unusual prey, porcupine, on the menu. So we all know wolves are carnivores, right? They eat meat, they hunt prey. But did you know they'll also eat porcupines? Yeah, porcupines, those prickly little creatures that are basically covered in needles. You wouldn't think it would be a very appetizing meal, but hey, a wolf's got to eat, right? I saw this video once. It was wild. This wolf had caught itself a porcupine, and it was trying to figure out how to eat it without getting a face full of quills. It was circling the porcupine, cautiously sniffing it, trying to find a way in. And then it just went for it. It lunged, grabbed the porcupine by the back, and started shaking it like a rag doll. The porcupine was freaking out, quills flying everywhere, but the wolf, it didn't care. It was hungry, and it was determined to get to the meat. Chapter 7, Wolves versus Bears Battle for Dominance. Now, this is a matchup for the ages, right? Wolves versus bears, two apex predators, both fighting for survival, fighting for dominance. It's the kind of encounter that gets your blood pumping. I remember seeing this one video. It was shot in Alaska. I think it was a lone grizzly bear, a big one, probably over 1,000 pounds. And it had found a kill, a moose carcass, I think. It was settling in for a feast when this pack of wolves showed up. Now, these wolves, they weren't backing down. They circled the bear, yipping and snarling, trying to intimidate it, trying to get it to leave the carcass. The bear, though, it wasn't having any of it. It stood its ground, swatting at the wolves, growling, letting them know who was boss. It was a tense standoff. You could feel the tension in the air. And then it erupted. One of the wolves, maybe a little too bold, got too close to the bear, and the bear just snapped. It swatted that wolf aside like it was a fly. The other wolves backed off a bit after that, but they didn't leave. They knew that carcass represented a valuable meal, and they weren't going to give up without a fight. In the end, the bear managed to hold on to its kill. Outro, the enduring spirit of wolves. From hunting strategies to moments of tenderness, wolves remain a symbol of nature's duality, beauty and danger intertwined. These stories remind us of their untamed spirit, their intelligence, their resilience, and the vital role they play in our world. Would you dare to step into their territory, or would you admire them from a safe distance? Share your thoughts. Your perspective might change after seeing these unforgettable moments.